Hi guys, Carrie Hepburn here. So I am going to talk with the second grade teachers today about their upcoming poetry unit. They'll be teaching this in third quarter, and I've unpacked the unit, not unwrapped the unit, but unpacked the unit. And I'll talk to you guys about how I did that, and hopefully you'll get an overview of what the unit's going to be about. You'll be able to think about some ideas for getting ready. I'll talk to you guys about how this unit fits in the overall picture of writing K through 5, what's going to happen in each bend, and share with you some ways that I just go about planning. So hopefully you find it really beneficial. So we're going to get started with the overview of this particular unit on poetry. So I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I had to spend a lot of time in this because this unit isn't how I taught poetry in the past. So I needed to really think about developing poets versus in the past I might write different kinds of poems and have structures for kids, but this is going to be about developing a poet. So it's not going to be about following like a graphic organizer and using that graphic organizer to help you teach poetry. It's going to be about getting kids to start thinking and reading and viewing things through a poet's eyes. So the students, really what they're going to do is, this is 3 bends, 17 sessions. They're going to be guided to find poetry in life. So just looking at objects and just seeing how they fit could be told through a poet's eyes. So we're going to teach them different techniques to add life into their poetry. We're going to also teach them how to listen to the sounds of words and focus on clarity and precise language. So you'll see how each bend builds upon each other for the students. So at the beginning they'll begin, looking at poems and studying different types of poems, so it's going to be a really fun unit, but it's going to be different than probably how you've taught poetry in the past. Just embrace it, enjoy the process, and I know I learned a ton unwrapping this unit already. So some things to think about as you're getting ready are paper choice. So they do have a poetry paper choice, but you might need to offer some different types of paper choice if your students need more time sketching out their thoughts before they start actually writing. Something you're going to want to think about is having a table or a little section in your classroom that have objects from nature. And so just getting them to study the objects from different points of view so that they can start thinking like a poet does, because a poet will study structure or texture or sounds, those senses kinds of things, and then use that in there to write their poems. So have some objects that they can study and allow them to bring some in as well. You're going to want to collect a variety of poetry books on different topics. So I remember when I used to teach poetry, I had all the funny types of poems, but really get creative and find different kinds of poems that the kids can analyze and they can read. There are tons of resources on the Heinemann site and in the Google Drive for your grade level, so check those out, and then check out some poetry books in your classroom or in your building library. So look at those digital resources. So check those out, and I don't have my Old Elm Speaks because I let a teacher borrow it, but start marking it up, and I'll talk to you guys about how I do that. I use the anchor charts throughout the unit, and then I use the writing continuum from FHSD, but you're not going to get a lot from that because we don't have something specific to poetry. But look at the FHSD continuum for language and word choice and possible elaboration. Those will be great places for you to look. And then look at the units of study rubric that they have. And so what I do is I write on the front of the book, after I look at the anchor charts and those scoring guides and the rubrics, I write on the front some different possible teaching points or things that I could show students if I wanted to use this book as a mentor text. And then I go through the book, and in the book I mark up exactly what you could use it for. So everything I found when I read a mentor text, so you could do this with Old Elm Speaks, all the different things that I found, I just made sure I wrote them on the front so I would know how I could use this book without having to flip through it all the time. So it just, you'll add to this year after year. It's not something that you can do all at once, but use that. And I'll tell you, when I was learning about the different types of poems that the kids will be learning about, I found it really helpful to go through Old Elm Speaks because I didn't understand what all of the different poems were. I'm just being completely transparent with you guys. Like, I hadn't taught maybe a conversational poem, and so after I learned about it, I found it in the Old Elm Speaks book and then marked that there for my personal reference. So I think that would be very helpful. Some ways you guys in poetry are teaching narrative, and so I want you to see how it all fits together. So we always start the school year off with narrative because we're all living a story. So as narrative progresses through all of the grade levels, I want you guys to see this. So in kindergarten, they begin writing for readers. So this is good for brand new writers. It helps them develop their language, and they write to just tell their story. And then in first grade, we move into small moments, and this is something that they'll do similar to third grade in a unit. And then they'll talk about developing those small moments from scenes into a series, so writing like a series of books. Second grade, as you guys already know, you've been teaching the lesson, you taught the lessons from the masters at the beginning of the year, taking those small moments and just making those bigger using mentor text. But poetry, what's so important for you guys to know is poetry is huge on the MAP test. And so in this particular unit, you're going to teach kids how to analyze poems that they're reading so they can mimic that in their writing, and they need to be able to analyze poems for the MAP test. There are tons of parts on the MAP test where they analyze poems and try to figure out like what words mean or the intention of the author. And as you can see, when we move through like third grade, they're going to be tested on this in third grade, and there isn't any poetry after you guys in second grade. So in thinking about poetry, you're going to be thinking about language, you're going to be thinking about structure, you're going to be thinking about craft. So this unit is so important for everything to come, and like your lessons from the master's unit help set the kids up for the rest of their narrative writing. So in third grade, they'll move into crafting true stories, and they'll do seed to moment stories, and they'll write once upon a time. So they'll develop fairy tales. So they're going to move into fairy tales. Fourth grade, they'll start doing the arc of a story. They'll relate many small moments to develop a story. And then in fifth grade, they move into narrative craft memoirs. So they're going to write, they'll start with their seed moment, but you'll see they can do flashbacks, they'll jump forward in time, and their memoirs typically are very personal and have a lot of emotion behind them. So the work that you're doing in this unit is so important, and the work that you did in the lessons from the master's unit is so important. All right, so something that I like to do when I unpack a unit, first I start by reading the overview, and then I move into writing out all of the teaching points from the sessions. So I read the overview, and then I write out the sessions for the different bends and look at all of the teaching points so that I can see how the unit progresses. I found that to be really helpful for me when I look at a unit overall, so I can see the importance of each of the things that I'm teaching. All right. Now we're going to get into talking about the different bends. So in bend 1, this is where the kids are going to start seeing with a poet's eyes. It's going to be 5 sessions long, and you're going to have them start by exploring poems. So you want to put lots of different types of poems in front of them and have them explore those poems. You want them to understand so that a poem is different from a story. So you could have them compare and contrast poems and narratives type of text. We want them to understand that poets are sparked by objects and feeling. So you're going to see that their language is going to become more precise and clear as this unit goes on. And we want them to develop an ear as they experiment with sound and line breaks, like line breaks within the poem and where they place those line breaks. So there's some really good lessons on that when you look at the actual mini lesson, and then revisiting in either the share or conferring time. So check those out. Bend 2, we're moving into delving deeper and experimenting with language. So getting more time to play with language, and they'll use sound to create meaning. So this particular bend is 5 sessions long. The kids will dive into poetry and play with language and learn how language can affect the flow of what they're writing, and how choosing powerful language will help the reader understand what they're writing. They'll focus on precise words and repetition to convey feelings. They'll observe poems that have mood and how poets choose words to convey mood. And this is really important too, because they'll continue this work of mood when they read a text, and how an author uses language and an illustrator uses color to convey a mood of a story, and how to analyze a text through that. So the work that you're doing in this will set them up for next year as well. They'll focus on meaning and crafting through metaphors, repetition, language, and white space. So this is going to be a big bend for them. You're not going to, here's what I wrote a note to myself, you're not going to teach rhyme, you're not going to teach haiku, and you're not going to teach diamante type poems. These were all things that I used to do that won't be necessarily, you won't be doing those anymore. So get ready to kind of just reframe your mind. Finally, in bend 3, you're going to talk about tying structures on for size. This is 7 sessions long. So the kids will be studying all aspects of poetic language and focusing on structures. So like natural structures. Don't worry, there's going to be a lot of supports for you as a teacher, because I was really concerned myself. But as I started reading through the teaching points and I looked at all of the anchor charts, I found that it was really helpful. And I had that mentor text and some other poems around me so that I could locate those and understand those better. They'll think and play with point of view, and they'll revise and edit. So some other tricks that I do, and I'm just going to wrap this up, are I go through and I mark all of the anchor charts, because that helps me understand what I'm teaching better. So I do that ahead of time, and I can see how the anchor charts will support me as the teacher. That's actually on this page over here. And how I can understand it better, and then how I can use it to support the students. So I hope that you found this helpful, and it's going to be a really fun unit. Have fun. Thank you.